Evening from Jerusalem. Israel says it expects the hostages who have spent more than 2 years in captivity in Gaza to be freed early tomorrow morning. It's a day that many Israelis feared would never come. And it's the US President Donald Trump who's being given all the credit for making it happen. Mr. Trump is on his way here, leaving Joint Base Andrews in Maryland in the past few minutes.
A lot of my friends. This is going to be a good one. So this is going to be a very special time, and I guess if you read your own papers and your own networks, everybody's very excited about this moment in time. So I'll see you on the plane. I think you're traveling with us, but this is a very special event. They had 500,000 people yesterday and today in Israel, and also the Muslim and Arab countries are all cheering. Everybody's cheering at one time. That's never happened before. Usually if you have one cheering, the other isn't. The other is the opposite. This is the first time everybody is amazed and they're thrilled, and it's an honor to be involved. And we're going to have an amazing time, and it's going to be something that's never happened before. So I'll see you on the plane, and we're going to have a good time. Okay, Peter? Nice to see you. Thank you, everybody. See you in a little while.
Well, the 20 living hostages are expected to be released at the same time, ending their torment and that of their families who never gave up hope and never stopped pressuring the government to help bring about their release. The Israeli Prime Minister addressed the nation tonight, describing tomorrow as the beginning of a new path.
This is a very moving evening, one of tears and also great joy, because tomorrow our sons and daughters will return to their borders. It has always happened that there's such sadness. It's a historic event that there's this sadness alongside this happiness. People didn't believe that it was going to happen, but our combatants believed, and so many of our people did, and I believed. Wherever we fought, we won. But to the same degree, I must say that the campaign has not ended. There are many security challenges ahead of us.
So it promises to be an extraordinary 24 hours in the Middle East. Thousands of Palestinian detainees due to be released after the hostages' safe return. Donald Trump flying into a hero's welcome before addressing the Israeli parliament. He'll then fly to Egypt, where he'll host that peace summit. And tonight it's been confirmed that the Palestinian president, Mahmoud Abbas, will be there. But away from the spectacle of Donald Trump's visit, the hostages and their families need to begin the process of rebuilding their lives, and the Palestinian people face the almost insurmountable task of rebuilding Gaza. International correspondent Alex Rossi has this report.
It is with apprehension and dread that Mohammed begins the long journey home. His family's life piled onto a small cart. He doesn't know what awaits him, only the destruction in his neighborhood is almost total. As he draws closer, the road becomes harder to follow. Rubble strewn across the path, the air thick with dust. Every step takes him deeper into heartbreak.
The road is closed. We managed to come through on foot. Here is the house, completely destroyed, as you can see.
Hundreds of thousands of Palestinians in Gaza are making this painful journey home. The euphoria the war had ended has given way to the sobering reality, the sheer scale of what's been lost. As the flow of humanitarian aid begins to increase, the level of need is painfully clear. Every truck making its way through this shattered landscape is surrounded by desperate crowds. How Gaza will be rebuilt is a question no one can answer. But the focus now is on the ceasefire and the release of hostages. And in Tel Aviv, in Hostages Square, after more than 2 years, they are hoping the captives will be home very soon.
We are with our families, we are with the families of the hostages at large and with the families of the hostages whose lives have been taken away by these savages, by these terrorists.
The October the 7th attacks left deep scars across Israel, and while the end to the violence brings hope, it also stirs powerful memories of the day that changed this country forever. There is, though, still much that's unclear about President Trump's peace plan. Significant questions remain. How will Hamas be disarmed? And who will step in and rebuild and rule the Gaza Strip? Across Israel, preparations are underway for the US president's arrival. Here he is very much the man of the moment and will receive a hero's welcome. He'll meet with families of the hostages and address the Israeli parliament. The Trump plan to end the war is still in its early stages. The US president says he hopes to achieve a broader, long-term settlement. But that will be far more difficult to deliver. Alex Rossi, Sky News, Tel Aviv.
We're just getting some more lines in from Donald Trump, who's on Air Force One talking to reporters. He is saying that the war is over, in his opinion. The ceasefire is going to hold. Gaza, he said, was like a demolition site. The Board of Peace, this is the board that will oversee a Palestinian committee of technocrats chaired by Donald Trump and Tony Blair assisting. That, he said, will be set up very quickly. I'm getting lots of verbal guarantees, which I believe. That's President Trump speaking on Air Force One as he heads over here to Israel. Let's bring in our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn. And Dominic, these are tense, crucial hours. Is it all going to plan thus far?
Well, actually, Mark, we've had sort of signs of a possible last-minute hitch in an interview with Razi Hamad, who is one of Hamas's leading figures, accusing the Israelis of stalling, saying that they are manipulating the lists of prisoners and even evading the Americans. And he says the coming hours will reveal the extent of the occupation's commitment to the agreement, and then we will determine our responses. So, you know, we have had similar hitches in the past with these prisoner and hostage exchanges that have been held up for some time. Are we going to see something similar? Is this a real sort of stalling tactic by Hamas, or is it genuine in accusing Israel of stalling itself? Now, if there is any delay, then we have an awkward situation tomorrow for the American president, who is coming here very confident, sounding very confident that we're going to have the ceasefire will hold and that we're going to see hostages being handed over either before he gets here or even while he is here, and there's a possibility of him arriving without any of that happening. Now, I think the assumption we make is that Hamas believes it can't risk alienating the American president, not least because he is one of the only forces pressuring the Israelis not to attack Hamas any further. But, you know, this is very unpredictable. It's the Middle East, and logic doesn't always apply. If things do go to plan, we're going to see hostages being released at some point, we think around 8 o'clock in the morning. Then we're going to see Palestinian prisoners being released, 250 life sentence prisoners being released, but also 1,700 other Gazans who've been detained since the war began. That's happening at some point during the day, but we do know that the American president is due here at 9:30. He will meet some of the families of the hostages, and then he's going to address the Knesset, the Israeli parliament. Then he is going to Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, where an array of world leaders will be meeting with him. And then, in a sense, you know, the easier bit will have been done. That's the exchange of hostages and prisoners and the ceasefire being put in place. The really tricky bit, as Alex was saying there in his report, is coming up with an alternative to what Hamas have given the Gazans for the last 18 years, which is oppressive Islamist rule, something that the Gazans can believe in. And central to that will be a security force, a multinational security force that will bring peace and law and order to Gaza, and then this administration, this authority. Slightly vague plans about that will then oversee the rebuilding, reconstruction of Gaza. If that doesn't happen, and if, you know, I think fairly significant progress isn't made towards that in Sharm tomorrow and the days ahead, then there is a real danger of the vacuum being left by Israeli forces pulling out of Gaza, then being filled by chaos and also Hamas returning as the dominant force, biding its time and then imposing its will over Gaza. Israel won't tolerate that, and we will go back to square one. So there's a possibility of greater progress towards a broader peace, an end to this war, but there's also the jeopardy of very much the opposite happening. If the diplomatic effort, the initiative underway in Egypt that follows tomorrow, doesn't make significant and fairly quick progress.
OK, Dominic, thanks very much indeed. Well, once Donald Trump has met the hostage families, should that indeed happen, and address the Israeli parliament, he'll head to Egypt, where he'll be joined by world leaders at a peace summit. Already there for us is our political editor, Beth Rigby, and also our US correspondent, Mark Stone. Mark, to you first. And is there real work to be done tomorrow at this summit, or is it really something of a victory lap for Donald Trump?
I think it is. It's both, to be honest. It is the beginning of work, and it is certainly a victory lap for Donald Trump. But you know, as Don was just describing there, I don't think we should be, we need to remember that this is not a deal done. Yes, it was last week that the two sides agreed what they agreed, whether we call it a truce or a ceasefire or phase one of Donald Trump's plan, committed to by both sides. It's not done till it's done. And that is why tomorrow is such a critical day. And when we hear that Hamas is saying that Israel is not abiding by its side, we've heard that before. Things have fallen apart before. So this really is a massive, massive day where things may not go to plan. But as you say, Donald Trump believes that he's now got both sides to a place that they have never been before. And that's why he thinks it's worth coming to both Israel and here to Egypt, where so many different world leaders are getting together. We're talking about more than 20 world leaders, plus foreign ministers from many other countries as well. I can hear planes overhead, some of them landing this evening, some in the morning. And all of them together will look at what Alex Rossi was talking about in his report. The day after, who governs Gaza? What peacekeeping troops are on the ground? Egypt today said they'd be willing to put peacekeeping troops on the ground only if the UN is the umbrella organization. So blue beret peacekeeping troops from the Middle East, perhaps. That's new, and that's very interesting. Then what about the Palestinian involvement? Well, I can confirm tonight that Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian president, will be here tomorrow. As of this morning, it wasn't guaranteed that he would come. We now know that he will come. Alongside him will be his number two, who met, interestingly, with Tony Blair today. Tony Blair is going to hold a key role in the transitional government, this technocratic government. Many people are sort of find it breathtaking that he is going to take a role, but the Palestinian Authority say that they welcome that. They want him to take a role, possibly because they really don't think there's any alternative, and they want to be able to prove that they can do it on their own and that he can be out of that job very, very quickly. An absolutely huge day tomorrow, and extremely unusual as well, pulled together in the space of just a couple of days.
Absolutely, Mark. Thank you very much. And Beth, good evening to you. And the Trump team seemed singularly unimpressed by what they heard from the UK government today.
Yes, Mark. Look, it's widely known, or thought in some circles at least, that Keir Starmer's a bit of a Trump whisperer. This Democrat of a prime minister has somehow managed to win over a Republican president. But his education secretary learnt the diplomatic lessons a very hard way today when Bridget Phillipson went on Trevor Phillips' Sunday show. And in talking about this peace deal, she referenced the US but did not reference Donald Trump himself. This is what she had to say earlier.
We have played a key role behind the scenes in shaping this. It's right that we do so because it's in all of our interest, including our own national interest, that we move to a lasting peace in the region. These are complex matters of diplomacy that we are involved in, but we do welcome and recognise the critical role that the American government played in moving us to this point. What matters now, of course, is how we move beyond this immediate end to the war, moving towards that lasting peace that we all want to see.
Now, Keir Starmer has been at pains at every moment to reference Donald Trump and his role in securing this breakthrough with Prime Minister Netanyahu in particular. And Bridget Phillipson's failure to do so sparked the ire of the US ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, today. He tweeted out with that clip, "I assure you she's delusional," he said of Bridget Phillipson. "She can thank Donald Trump anytime just to set the record straight." So a bit of difficult diplomacy there. Number 10 sources simply saying this evening that the Prime Minister has been very mindful of praising Donald Trump, and you can see his words for yourself. But look, in the bigger scheme of things, UK sources are saying that the UK had some role in helping behind the scenes. Jonathan Powell, the Prime Minister's national security advisor, was here in Egypt, and I'm told that he's been talking with the president's special envoy every day. But look, the fact that President Trump has managed to convene 20-plus leaders, they were only told on Friday to get to Sharm el-Sheikh for this historic signing of the deal, speaks to his influence. It also speaks to the need for these leaders, or desire to these leaders, to acknowledge that, but also try to have a role in phase 2 here in the reconstruction of Gaza and the leadership of Palestine during that process. And they will be here in a ceremonial way, if you like, tomorrow, but they will be hoping that that will lead the way to more involvement in the long-term planning of how to get past the stage 1 of this deal, if indeed it happens tomorrow. And as for the UK, they're going to put in 20 million of aid immediately to help with sanitation in Gaza. But this, the first step really on a very, very long journey. And you will see lots of leaders here tomorrow wanting to catch the eye of Trump and to exert some influence in this peace process.
OK, Beth, thank you very much. And Mark Stone also there in Sharm el-Sheikh. Thank you too. Thank you both. There we are. That's all from Jerusalem for now, but clearly a momentous night, and early morning is in store as the families of the hostages and indeed this whole country anxiously awaits their release. Yalda Hakim will have full coverage in the early hours and throughout breakfast as more than 2 years in captivity finally comes to an end for those hostages. I'll be back a little later in the day. For now, back to Gillian in London.
Mark, thank you. A cabinet minister has told Sky News that Keir Starmer's national security advisor did not play a role in the collapse of the China spying case, amid mounting scrutiny over the decision to drop charges against 2 men accused of working for Beijing. Bridget Phillipson insisted that Jonathan Powell was not involved, a comment immediately called into question by opposition parties. Nick Martin reports.
These are the 2 men at the heart of a spy case causing a rift between Downing Street and the White House. Former parliamentary researcher Chris Cash and academic Chris Berry were charged with spying for China. They denied the charges. Last month, that case was dropped, allegedly after the Crown Prosecution Service met with officials, including National Security Advisor Jonathan Powell, seen here on the far right. The government has repeatedly confirmed no ministers were involved in the decision and now say that includes Powell himself.
Yes, I can give that assurance. We're very disappointed that the CPS were not able to take forward the prosecution. I think it's worth pointing out that this case dates back to 2023, so decisions that were taken were on the basis of legislation in force at the time and the implications that had for the CPS's ability to take the case forward.
That intervention comes with President Trump reportedly becoming concerned about the UK's security reliability after the charges were dropped. And it's a claim challenged almost immediately by the opposition.
There are plenty of disclosures about various meetings that he was involved in, including with other senior civil servants, the Permanent Secretary of the Foreign Office, basically trying to rewrite the narrative around China, saying that they're not a threat, they're a challenge, and that there were meetings basically within government not to provide critical information that should have been provided to the Crown Prosecution Service to enable that trial to proceed.
China called the charges pure fabrication. It's the latest challenge for the government posed by Beijing. There are concerns about the apparent ease with which the Chinese have been able to access the top rungs of British power and society. This is accused spy Yang Tengbo, photographed not just with Prince Andrew, but also seen with former Tory Prime Ministers Theresa May and David Cameron. This is a delicate diplomatic balancing act, with the UK finding itself once again jammed in the middle of two of the world's biggest trading superpowers, China and the United States. But one security expert has told Sky News that China's repeated attempts to interfere in the affairs of Britain cannot go unchallenged forever.
We'll see an awful lot more Chinese spy cases going to court. And again, we'll see occasions where there's no evidence provided, and that is to protect the intelligence sources that have given the evidence to get something to court, to get it out into the public domain. They will disrupt the operation. But at some stage, you can only do so many disrupt operations before you actually need to come down hard on someone and send a very clear message.
Pressure is certainly increasing on the government to explain why these recent cases collapsed. But this is as much about prosperity as it is about security. The Chancellor, Rachel Reeves, needs to keep China on side as a key trading partner if her ambitions to grow the economy are to be realised. Nick Martin, Sky News.
The niece of a Kenyan woman allegedly murdered by a British soldier 13 years ago will visit London this week to push for the man's extradition. Kenyan prosecutors have issued an arrest warrant for a British national who's accused of killing 21-year-old Agnes Wanjiru. And now her family will make their case personally in a meeting with the Defence Secretary. Our Africa correspondent, Yusra El-Bagir, reports.
A message to Agnes from her niece, scratched into the leaves of the sisal tree, planted to mark her grave. The family couldn't afford a tombstone, and now this towering plant is a symbol of the years that have passed since she was murdered. Years of her killer walking free. Of all the messages Esther's written for her aunt, this one carries more hope than grief. 13 years and finally going to the United Kingdom, it says. She's travelling to London to meet the Secretary of State for Defence, to call for the extradition of the British soldier accused of killing Agnes Wanjiru, supported by a recent arrest warrant issued by the Kenyan government.
I'm feeling sad because at 21 years, I should not be doing this. I should be doing other things, enjoying my life. But now, since the British government and Kenyan government failed, that's why I'm planning all this, to go and continue lobbying for Agnes. It's until they serve Agnes justice, that's when Agnes' spirit will rest. But until then, it will always cry out.
In many ways, Agnes's hometown is still trapped in the past. It was set up as a colonial settler town favored by retired British soldiers. 60 years since independence, it hosts the headquarters of the British Army Training Unit in Kenya, known as Batuk. There have been thousands of complaints against British soldiers training here in Nanyuki, but one case still stands out 13 years later. The brutal murder of Agnes Wanjiru is still extremely painful for the people who knew and loved her, and they're hoping that her killer will be extradited to Kenya and finally brought to justice. Divisions in Nanyuki run deep, with sex workers at a dangerous intersection. Agnes was working as a hairdresser and sex worker when she was killed, and sex workers here still see her murder as a cautionary tale, in spite of a ban prohibiting British soldiers from soliciting sex overseas.
It's not that they are not buying sex, they are still buying sex, but what they are using, we have Airbnbs. They are using Airbnb, and they have their pimps who they are using to bring those sex workers to their houses, and they do their stuff there, and they pay them there.
The Ministry of Defence told us that there is absolutely no place for sexual exploitation and abuse by people in the British Army, and sent this statement to Sky News in response to our report. Our thoughts remain with the family of Agnes Wanjiru, and we remain absolutely committed to helping them secure justice. We understand that the Kenyan Director of Public Prosecutions has determined that a British national should face trial in relation to the murder of Miss Wanjiru in 2012. This is subject to ongoing legal proceedings, and we will not comment further at this stage. They also stated that the UK deeply values the defence relationship with Kenya underpinned by the Defence Cooperation Agreement, and that unacceptable and criminal behaviour has absolutely no place in the armed forces. Back at Agnes's grave, her sister and niece are deep in prayer, holding on to the faith that has fueled their pursuit of justice for so long and means everything at this moment. Yusra al-Bagir, Sky News, Kenya.
Time now for a look at some of the day's other top stories. And 2 young children found dead in a house in Stafford have been named by police. 3-year-old Abdul Momin Al-Fateh and Miraj Ul-Zara, who was 2, were pronounced dead at the scene in Corporation Street this morning. A 43-year-old woman has been arrested on suspicion of murder. Afghanistan says it has killed 58 Pakistani soldiers in border clashes. It says it was responding to repeated airspace violations, having accused its neighbour of bombing Kabul earlier this week. Pakistan claims to have killed 200 Afghans during the clashes. A man has appeared in court charged with stalking the Liberal Democrats leader Ed Davey. 58-year-old Inigo Roland was also charged with possession of a flick knife in relation to offences alleged to have taken place between June and this month. Farmers have welcomed reports that the Treasury could be reconsidering plans for inheritance tax on farmers. The proposals put forward last year to impose a tax on farms valued at more than £1 million brought farmers onto the streets of London in protest. But now it's being reported that that threshold could be raised. Our West of England correspondent Dan Whitehead reports.
All right, Az, we're going to let these cows in then.
At 14, Harry is on his way to becoming farm manager.
Do you want to let the other one in, Harry?
His dad hopes to pass down this small dairy in South Gloucestershire, which has been in the Cornock family since 1822. But the threat of a new inheritance tax bill announced at last year's budget has been a constant stress.
It's been on my mind the whole time, to be honest. I mean, I didn't really think about it until you actually contacted me about this interview, and then I thought, do you know what? It actually has been a massive worry. In fact, I even looked into getting life insurance to insure my life, and I can't get life insurance because I had a heart condition. And that was one way I thought I might be able to cover up my kids. Sorry. That's okay. It is a worry for everyone who's farming, you know, trying to keep a farm going in itself and then thinking this on top. Sorry, I'm going to have to stop.
No, that's okay, yeah, take a breather, yeah. But there may be some fresh hope. The government won't comment on multiple reports that it's considering increasing the threshold at which farmers would have to pay the inheritance tax from £1 million of assets to £5 million.
Farmers have been too busy farming to be able to get up to London in their thousands and protest like we saw at the start of this year and the end of last. But senior figures in farming tell me that a significant increase to the inheritance tax threshold would be enough to satisfy most and reduce the threat on the smaller family farms.
However, proposals being considered could see bigger farms above £10 million liable for full inheritance tax.
The big farms will have to think again, and I think that will be through not dividing them up, but restructuring them with the ownership. I think a lot of the large farms would be able to sort it through with good intergenerational restructuring.
The government had previously said only the wealthiest of estates would face this new tax, a point that has been protested against multiple times.
Go on. Shh. Shh. Oh yeah, look, she's going to calve soon, isn't she? Look.
There is pressure on Labour to row back in some way to appease a rural vote that increasingly feels betrayed. Dan Whitehead, Sky News in South Gloucestershire.
Time now to catch up with all of the sports news with Nick.
Staying connected is vital for business. Sky Business sponsors this report.
The club made a great pitch to me, that they wanted me. They gave me a 4-year contract. All the stops were out. They made me feel really welcome.
We arrived at the airport there in Madrid, and there were 30, 40, 50 journalists, cameras, and we thought, oh, they come for this movie star, you know. Suddenly we see, Jesus Christ, Jimmy, it's for you.
It's always difficult losing a great player. Jimmy, for me, was always a world-class striker. Probably not talked about as much, I don't think, as to some of the other great strikers, but I was fortunate enough to play with him.
We obviously made a very good profit on him. If you just take the business transaction, not the football emotion, the transaction was a good deal because we bought him for 2 and we sold him for £12 million.
In 2 years, got 6 times their money. I was not a big earner at the time at the club. So for them, it was a big gain.
He's settling into his new surrounds, the player renamed Judas Floyd Money in the Bank when he was drummed out of Ellen Road. But stories of excessive demands were fictional, according to Atletico's new signing.
I was supposed to stay there. I was supposed to sign a new contract and feel happy. If they can ask 12 million for a player, the rest is all clear.
Were you asking to be the most highly paid player in the Premiership, as we're led to believe?
No, don't believe the figures at all. Don't believe the figures at all.
You didn't want £40,000 a week? Would have been nice, but is that what you were demanding?
That's not what I asked.
Reading the text last night, that was nothing about money from his agent. Well, Jesus, lads, honestly, if that wasn't about money, I don't know then. Maybe I'm getting it wrong when he said me there. A lot of you have written good articles about it. And all I'd like to say is that I've seen quotes of 45,000. I think you're being modest to Jimmy on that one, honestly. I wouldn't like to say, but I think you'd be disappointed if you're only saying that, honestly.
Did you feel you had to speak out publicly for the club?
Yes, you have, because we didn't want to sell a top player. I had one of the best number 9s that you could wish to have.
Sky Business sponsors this report.